I'm trying to find a big tree to hug. And I'm going to do this for the environment, of course. I'm going to do this for climate change because, man, climate change is hurting us, and I just need to hug this tree so tight. Save us. I can do better. I can show you this. Why Africa needs fossil fuels, or why fossil fuels for Africa. Of course, we have energy, reliable, dense, versatile energy. Energy that can power machines, energy that can power industries, energy that can power transportation, etc. etc.
I'll begin by asking, so climate change, is it real?
Thank you for inviting me. And what will I say about climate change? Yeah, climate change, according to the definition, the basic definition of climate change, that is real. The climate has always been changing, but that is not the definition that the UN or the IMF or World Bank or the climate activists refer to. So whenever they talk about climate change, they mean anthropogenic climate change or human caused climate change. And that one, I think it's just partially correct. I think we contribute so little to the climate change in terms of, particulate matter emissions or greenhouse gas emissions. It's mostly natural. That is what I will say.
Okay, so the intense flooding, the droughts, and the warming of the earth, you are saying it's natural. It's not caused by human activities.
I wouldn't put it that way. So when you want to look at these things in the right way, you have to look at the data, what the data says or shows. So a good example is my place. For the past, I've grown up here. I'm 30 years old, and that is, when you're talking about climate, you referring to the weather patterns of a particular region in a duration of 30 years. So that is climate. If you look at us today or last year the same day or the same month, last year this July wasn't like this. It was maybe colder or a little bit warmer. That is just the weather. Weather changes from time to time. When you look at the longer period, like 30 years, that is now when you can see the clear trend. Maybe heat waves are increasing or flooding is increasing. Or if let's say today we had a flood in Kisii, Kenya, where I am at right now, we wouldn't refer to that as climate change. That is just a flood that happened. And let me just state that if you look at the data says something different. According to the IPCC has done a great summary of various reports in relation to the climate. There are other bodies that have done the same thing. So you just have to look at the data. For flooding, the IPCC said they don't have enough data to say there is a particular trend. But then it's not like the floods have the frequency of floods has gone up or down. If you look at droughts, IPCC says droughts haven't gone up. Yeah. If you look at hurricanes and tropical cyclones, it has gone down. If you look at heat waves, maybe that has gone slightly up, but that is just it. Everything else has literally gone down. So you just have to look at the data.
Okay. So you are saying that human activities are not the main contributor of this climate change as this scientific backed research. That's what they are propounding. So going through some of the your statements or your advocacy, you've hinted at the fact that global warming is natural and has nothing to do with human activity. So if so, then would you say the world should just sit down and then cross their legs and then continue to live as they have been doing for so long? Do you think we should change a bit of our habits to averse this warming of the earth?
Okay, so I wouldn't want to dictate to somebody in the US or somebody in China what to do, and I wouldn't want those people to dictate Jasper to do ABC. If you want to, so I don't want to sound as a devil, but I would say if you want to do something for the climate or for the environment, you can do it. You don't have to make every other person do it. That is point number one. Point number two. No, there is no way somebody who lives in the US, a good example, consuming. Let me just state this. So a good example is the US. The US consumes about 20 million barrels of oil per day. Their population is 330 million people. Africa consumes 4 million barrels of oil per day. Our population is 1.5 billion people. The same thing is happening in Europe. The Europeans are consuming a lot of fossil fuels. Yeah. The same thing in China. China's got a population of 1.5 billion people. It's consuming about 16 million barrels of oil per day. We just at 4 million barrels of oil per day. And China is burning a lot of coal. The same with India. Even the US is burning coal. Germany is burning coal. And these other big or developed countries. Why should those people expect me to care about the climate? Why should I? I'm a farmer in rural Kenya who survives in subsistence farming. I wake up in the morning, go toil under the sun, depending on my muscles to perform work. Why should I be worried about climate change, really? And that is the same thing that is happening throughout Africa. These people don't have access to fertilizer. Fertilizer is a fossil fuel. So we don't have to look at the energy alone. We have to look at these other things. I have my neighbors, they live in grass-thatched houses. They live in mud houses, If you go to these people who are preaching to us about climate change, they live in bungalows made with, steel and cement, which are fossil fuels. They drive in cars. We are literally pushing carts and depending on muscles to perform work. Why should I be worried about climate change, honestly?
Okay. So leading into why you should, you're talking about the global north or these wealthy nations, say in Africa or, countries in the global south should worry about climate change because you are talking about the consumption. So the BRICS leaders recently just demanded that the wealthy nations should fund the global climate transition. After all, they have a larger carbon footprint, as you mentioned. What's your thoughts on that? Should they fund it, or should Africa, play its part in, funding the global climate transition?
Okay, let me just state that if you look at our global greenhouse gas emissions per year, it amounts to 3%, and Africa is made up of a population of 1.5 billion people, which is about almost 20% of the total global population, 18 to let's say 20%. So just 3%. That is where I'm going to start my point at. So that is me saying that we should never be worried about climate change. So those people putting a global whatever climate fund or energy transition or funds to help us transition from whatever we are using to something sustainable, and when they usually say sustainable, they mean in relation to the climate change or in relation to protecting the environment. I don't think that is a bad thing. First, I don't think it's a bad thing, but then I think that Africa has got a bigger potential with access to fossil fuels. And so if we agree to these people, like if we agree that we're going to have a climate fund or transitioning, whatever energy transitioning fund, that means that we're going to be tied to protecting the environment or protecting or stopping climate change. That means that we cannot consume our resources. That means that we cannot consume our oil, coal, and gas. That means that we cannot do mining in Africa, or if we are going to do any mining, we have to do it in a sustainable manner or in relation to climate change. If we're going to set up industries in Africa for our unemployed youths, we have to do it in a way that we have to really care about the climate. And that just means that our development is going to be arrested. It's going to be arrested because we're not using what the Western countries used to develop, which is fossil fuels. So I think we have a bigger potential if we are going to use our own resources to develop our economies than compared to those things, the climate funds or energy transition funds.
Speaking about investing in the global climate transition, many African nations, including your country, Kenya, have invested heavily in renewable energy solutions. In 2023, your government unveiled a climate change action plan to showcase its commitment to the global climate, to the cause. Being a huge advocate for fossil energy in Africa, what are your thoughts? Are they wasting their money, or should they, direct these funds elsewhere?
So when we're talking about renewable energy, and let me just refer to electricity. Let me leave the energy, because if you're talking about energy is a big thing, or its definition is broader compared to, because I know most people, when they hear energy, they think electricity and they're thinking, renewable energy. So if you look at our energy map today in Africa, almost 90%, actually in sub-Saharan Africa, almost 90% of our energy is from renewable sources, biomass. That is it. So that is looking at how, say, transportation, cooking, industrial heating, and stuff like that. Almost 90% is from biomass. Biomass is cow dung, firewood, charcoal, crop residue. That is it, almost 90%. So our energy so far is renewable. Let me put it that way. But I know when they're talking about renewable energy, they're referring to solar and wind and electricity. So electricity sources which are renewable. They also refer to geothermal, hydro power plants. But then the climate cult is always talking about solar and wind. Solar and wind, that is it, the two, solar and wind. My president, William Ruto, is the worst of, I think is the worst president Africa, like in the whole of Africa. That is what I think. And he, of course, he's money oriented, or is oriented to whoever is going to give him money to loot. And his government is also focused on that. Who is giving us money? Where can we get funds from to steal? And of course, the green industry, the green energy industry has got a lot of money, of funds, or to give to these African leaders. So of course they're going to say, we don't want to invest in fossil fuels, we want to invest in solar and wind. Of course, that is what is going to give them funds. Yeah. So they'll do anything for those funds. And I don't blame those people. Sometimes they're being pushed by the World Bank. Sometimes it's the IMF. And of course, the UN is behind all of that, the green agenda. Yeah. I think that African leaders should really, if they cared about their people, they would they will just look at China as an example, because the Chinese have managed to do amazing work. Like in a duration of 30, 40 years, the Chinese have managed to beat poverty to reduce poverty in their country by 87% or something, almost 90%, in a duration of like 40 years alone. And those people are not, of course, sleeping hungry. They are doing well. Industries, you can see industries developing in China. Almost everything we are getting in Kenya, in Uganda, in Tanzania is from China. The same thing is happening in the US. The US are buying stuff from China. And what is China doing differently? China is investing a lot in coal and fossil fuels, because they provide reliable, very, very reliable and affordable energy. And this energy can power industries, it can power homes, it can power transportation, aviation industries, and stuff like that. So that is what we should, like, sometimes I see these things are so easy, like it's straightforward. Why can't we do whatever China is doing? And that is it. And by the way, China, the UN and these other bodies have been trying to tell China, it's high time you stop consuming coal or burning coal, and you switch into renewable solar and wind. And China says, we will do that by 2060. India is saying the same thing. We'll do that by 2060. Yeah, because we need reliable and affordable energy for our industries. Why? That is what Africans should be doing.
Okay. Talking of what Africa should be doing, are you saying that Africa should look at exploring its fossil capacity, and not just jump on the trend of transitioning to the green energy, and the US and Europe they are the ones that are contributing most to these climate disasters, or their carbon footprint is way more than Africa. Are you saying that Africa should rather look at exploring fossils, and then these countries in the global north should rather change their ways, to offset the damage that they've caused to the planet?
I wouldn't say necessarily they have damaged the environment, because if you look at a good example is the UK before the coal era in the UK. The UK it had very poor people. They had literally wiped their forests completely. They were either they were cutting trees for firewood, or they were clearing land to produce food. And that is what's happening in Africa. We are literally clearing away our forests, because we need, of course, the biomass to burn in our homes. And we also encroaching the forest because we want to, have more land to plant food, to produce our food. What is going to change all of that? And of course, I haven't mentioned the killing of whales for the oil, for their oil, sperm whales for their oil. I haven't mentioned killing of elephants and stuff like that for the tusks, which plastics saved. Literally. So the oil industry saved whales, it saved forests, it saved elephants, it saved biodiversity, birds and stuff like that. It has done all of that. So I wouldn't say that the oil industry has destroyed the environment. It has done a lot of good compared to the bad, maybe pollution and the emissions. Yeah. So that is my first point. My second point will be, Africa has got all of these resources. We just have to look at what the West did to get to where it is today. What did they do? They banned their natural resources, and actually they're banning our resources as well. They're banning our oil, because if you look at the amount of oil we produce today, 70%, 75% goes to these Western countries and Asian countries. We are not using it locally. If you look at our natural gas, 45% is going outside. The rest, just 55% is used locally. Why can't we use those resources to better our economies and preserve biodiversity?
So you are saying we should look at these things to preserve biodiversity. So
yes,
the West is saying that Africa should transition to green energy. That's why they provided all these funds, as you mentioned, and so essentially they are asking us to drop fossil exploration, which they did in the past, to develop their economies. Do you think it is fair of these developed nations to ask Africa, to abandon fossil exploration, and then transition to green energy? Do you think it will affect African economy? Are we going to be able to realize our true potential without fossil?
We just can't. There is no country that has done that. Every other developed country is literally burning a lot of oil and coal and natural gas. Literally. There is no country in the world that has developed using intermittent, parasitic, dilute solar and wind, which is for producing electricity alone. So we shouldn't listen to those countries. And if they want to lead as an example, we can listen to them once we beat poverty and hunger in Africa, which is maybe going to be 2100. That is when we should maybe stop burning fossil fuels, after we have burnt a lot of fossil fuels, to ensure that every other person in Africa is fed, is sleeping in a nice house, has got air conditioning, tap water, and all of these nice things that fossil fuels bring.
So you are saying that Africa or the rest of the world should give Africa, because since they had the head start, they should give Africa about a century to realize its potential in fossils before we can say, okay, as you mentioned, 2100, before we can say, now we want to join this global global climate transition.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much.